thanks for joining me this evening, wherever you are. I doubt if there are many people from the UK joining me just at the moment because it's early hours there. But yeah, Around the World in 80 Whales, this was a project that I created for myself when I retired early in 2019. And I decided that I was going to ride around the world on a motorbike and use the whales to actually give me the places to go to. So the whales were going to actually say, well, you need to go here, you need to go there. But it didn't happen because, as we know, 2020 happened, things changed. And now I've sort of flipped it and I'm doing a lot more cruising with a bit of motorbiking in between, which is what I'm doing at the moment in Canada. So tonight's talk is not about cetaceans specifically. There are cetaceans in there, but it's mainly to share a lot of my photos with you from the trips that I've done since 2018. Obviously, I have been to quite a few places. I'm lucky enough to spend a lot of time on beautiful cruise ships. I go out mainly with Viking at the moment. All of their cruise ships are exactly the same, so it's very easy for me. I don't have to worry about tripping over and getting lost because everything is in exactly the same places is on every single ship. We take about 980 passengers when we're full. Obviously, after COVID, we had much less, much fewer, but now we're back up to full capacity again, and it's a great time. And here are some of my friends, some of the regular cronies, if you like, coming out on deck with me. I do deck watches every morning when we're at sea, and obviously give talks during the cruise as well. This is me on stage talking about a little fairy penguin. It's a huge screen. It's absolutely fantastic to work with a big screen. And we have a lot of fun on board as well. It tends to be rather interactive. So these are the cruises basically that I've done since I saw you last. Those of you who may remember that I was flying off after my talk to Fort Lauderdale to join a cruise there. I think everybody was worried that I wasn't making the time, but in fact, the time that you were thinking was not a flight time. It was my time to arrive at the airport. So I was quite happy with that. So I did Caribbean and Central America. Then I flew back and went straight into COVID. So we had a lockdown. And then when Viking came back the following year, they said, well, do you want to do a cruise with us? You can either do Bermuda or you can do Iceland, and you leave next week. So obviously I had no talks for Bermuda. I had plenty of talks for Iceland. So I went around Iceland 4 times, which was fantastic. I can recommend it. It's a wonderful, wonderful country. Not just the whales, but inland. It's superb. It's wonderful scenery. Then down in the bottom left, I did the world cruise. This was actually supposed to be a world cruise from Los Angeles, going westwards, back through the Pacific, but that was cancelled, or that was changed 2 days before we joined the cruise. So 2 days before we joined the cruise, we were told we're not doing that route. So could you write some more talks, possibly? So we had a lot of talks to do. And for the first month of this 2-month cruise, we cut it short. I got off in Malta. For the first month, I was preparing talks because it takes me about 3 or 4 days to produce one talk. But it was great because it was a wonderful, wonderful gung-ho sort of cruise. Then I did a longer cruise, as you can see there in 2022. So Mumbai down to Bangkok, and then from Bangkok went down to Bali, and then from Bali down to Sydney. Then had a month off in Australia, mainly in Queensland and New South Wales, just touring, and obviously getting as much whale watching as I could. And then I rejoined the same ship to go from Sydney across to Auckland and then back to Sydney again. And then I flew out to Auckland and had a couple of months out there, which is fantastic. So I've just finished these Vancouver to Seward and Seward to Vancouver trips, which have been amazing. You'll see some photographs from that. I never believed that Alaska could be so beautiful. It is just stunning. Please do go there. And then in September, so at the end of September, I'm going to be joining another Viking ship to do New York to Montreal, and then a different cruise line that's only just launched a ship, Explorer Journeys. I'll be doing New York to Quebec, and then later on in the year, or next year anyway, January the 9th, we're going to try that world cruise again. So the great thing here is that I've got 52 talks already that I didn't use the first time. So that's going to be a bit of a feat up for me, and it's going to be good to get out there Anyway, the talk that I'm going to give now, I'm just going to press the button, and I've actually timed all of the slides. So once I touch it, I can't really go back on things. I'm going to rattle through in a lot of speed. There are about 450 screens for you to look at. So please put your feet up and just enjoy what you're seeing. And at the end, obviously, if you've got any questions about them, I'll answer the questions about them specifically. So these are the sort of photographs that I'm taking. Obviously, digital cameras make it much easier now to take photos and process them. We're going to start off just with some of the fish. And the first fish that I want to talk about, which was actually of cruises, but the first fish was actually on the Alaska cruise here, and this was the ocean sunfish, or mola mola. Beautiful animal, up to 3.5 meters long, a big dinner plate of a fish, just that huge dorsal fin sticking out the top, and they just float around. So once you see one, it's likely that you're going to see others. So we actually had 6 in a string. Another ship that I know of that was out there had actually 100 of them in the inside passage and in the fog, because they were coming so close to the ship. But beautiful, beautiful animal, really good to see, and they do end up very close. Then we had basking sharks as well, the second largest fish in the world, plankton feeders. These were just swimming around again in the inside passage. And we had a good number of those. I think about 7 of those through the day. They were just coming in and quite interested in the ship. I don't know whether the ship actually churned up any of the plankton to make it easier for them to feed, but there you can see that big diamond-shaped head that is very distinctive for them. And then the salmon shark, and Dareth was very happy about this because she said that she's often seen this behavior as well. There was this shark worrying a log, and I didn't know what was going on at all. But then when I spoke to Dareth, she said, yeah, I see that a lot on our cruises. So it's behavior that I wasn't expecting. I don't know what they're doing. Are they sharpening their teeth, or are they just having a bite? Are they actually feeding on something that's on there? Well, the salmon were running. We had pink salmon, or the humpback salmon in the rivers. The other 4 species of salmon weren't running at the time, but we did get quite a few of these inland as well. So this was in Alaska. Can't remember where, but this is where we saw a bear, and you'll see the bear a little bit later. He'd come down to feed. So now onto reptiles. You can see this is all no hands. I'm not touching a thing here. So now onto some reptiles. Obviously, we see turtles, and the greatest number of turtles, I think the green turtle, was in the Whitsundays. We had a lot of turtles up there. And then we've got the crocs. So this is a caiman. This was in Belize. Obviously one of the smaller crocodilians, but the largest one, the saltwater crocodile, yeah, we have those all around. So this was in the Tortuguero Canal in Panama. And of course, when we got to Australia, we had quite a lot in the Adelaide River up near Darwin. I don't know why they have an Adelaide River in Darwin. This is one of those. This is one of the lads in the Adelaide River. And I think this is Casanova. Now, Casanova is a bit of a brute. He has actually killed his girlfriends as well. So he's not one that you want to mess with. And you can see that with a camera, you can get fairly close. I certainly wasn't dangling over the side for these sort of things. But incredible animals, and well worth a trip out if ever you get the chance to go out and see crocodiles. This is a much smaller crocodile, the freshwater crocodile, a little bit more docile, but still it's not an animal that you want to mess with. Very distinctive head. And obviously the difference between crocodiles and alligators is to do that, I think it's the second tooth back. The alligators actually have, the crocodiles actually have them coming up outside, as you can see here, the second tooth back. They come outside of the upper jaw, whereas the other ones, alligators don't have that. They actually go inside the mouth. A lot of black iguana. This was in Belize, I think, or Honduras. So beautiful, beautiful animals. And you can get quite close to them as well. Green iguana, a little bit different. You can see those cheek pouches there, which the black iguanas don't have. And here again, here's another one just hiding in the tree. Big, big animals. I mean, they can be well over 1 meter long and quite colourful as well. This is one in its mating state as well. So it's ready to go. And then the stenosaur. The stenosaur is a really, really old animal. It's almost from the, well, it is from the dinosaur era as well. Big animal. and the monitors. Sorry, that should have said monitor, not monitor. The Asian water monitor lizard. These we had in most of Asia, all the way down to Australia as well. And the monitor lizards are very, very much the sort of animals that you're going to see there, or lizards. A changeable lizard. I'm not sure why it's called changeable. I don't know that it's that much of a chameleon. It doesn't change that much. But look at those two little picks on the back of its head, like nostrils, a bit of camouflage there. And this little tiny one here was only, it was only about, size of my little finger. Tiny little fella, but a changeable one. You can see those stars coming out of the head that are a good distinctive feature for it. Geckos all around the world, whether they're house geckos or Indian geckos. You get them all over the place. Oh, geezered lizard has dropped out. That probably means that some of these slides aren't going to be showing, unfortunately. Sorry about that. And in Australia, we had a lot of reptiles, Australian water dragon being a spectacular animal with this little crest as well, that superbly adapted for the place that it lives. Okay, snake alert now. Look away if you don't want to see a snake. There's only the one. I'll let you know when we're through it. And it's a sea snake. So it's not something that you're going to see on land. Of course, sea snakes are incredibly venomous. Okay, sea snakes have gone now, so no more snakes, and we're on to little reptiles, the skinks. We're rattling through here. I didn't realize these were going to click through as quickly as this. And a king skink as well. Again, here we're in Australia and New Zealand. Bearded dragon in Australia. This very distinctive frill to its, oh yes, I don't know what that was at all, frill to its chin. Occasionally you get animals that you just cannot find out what they are. And the Komodo. Now the Komodo dragon, we went to the island called Rinka, not to Komodo itself. It's in the Komodo archipelago, and Rinka is actually much better because you get closer to them. You're on boardwalks, you look down at them. These, of course, are huge, huge animals. They're quite smelly as well, but they're living with deer and oxen that are just wandering around, doing nothing. One bite from these, then that's going to put anticoagulants into the bloodstream of the prey and other bacteria as well, and eventually it'll die. So the Komodos don't need to do a lot. They can just laze around. A lot of the prey animals don't realize that they are that dangerous. They will be not snuggling up to them, but they'll be within meters of them. Now, the tuatara is an interesting animal. This is not a lizard. This has 2 rows of teeth in its upper jaw. Lizards only have 1, but this is from the dinosaur era. So this is very often called the living dinosaur, and you can find these in collections. Obviously, there are some in the wild. This was at Zealandia in New Zealand, which is a huge, huge area just with sort of predator-proof fencing around it. So a lot of reptiles are in there already, but a lot of birds can fly in and just do their own thing as well. Spectacled owl. This was in one of the parks in Port Limon in Costa Rica. And it's always worthwhile going into municipal parks because you never know what's going to be there. Always look up. Don't just go in there and think there's nothing. Quite a few boobies around on my trips. So Peruvian booby. These were at the Las Ballenas Islands in Peru. Fantastic islands, well worth visiting. Very similar to Galapagos, but a lot of birds nesting there. Not just these, but some other birds that you'll see as well. And obviously the boobies are taking over because there are plenty of good roosting sites there for them. Masked booby, not quite as fluffy as the other one. And the brown booby. Now the brown booby does get confused a lot with other birds because young boobies are usually brown anyway, so even the masked boobies can be brown, but the adult masked brown boobies have that white front. Now the Australasian gannet, obviously it's the same family, the gannets and the boobies, and we were lucky enough to go to a roost here where there were about 1 million of them, I think, spread over 5 colonies. Fantastic birds. Unfortunately, it was very, very hot, and a lot of these fluffy birds probably wouldn't survive because they weren't getting enough water. But the population of gannets is actually improving there in general. It's just that we went at the end of the season. You do get some animals, some birds like this that's having a really, really good feed, and obviously that is going to be a survivor because it's getting its fluids from its food. They're not drinking water. All of that is coming from the food. Gannets and boobies have their nostrils on the inside of their beaks so that when they dive, they don't actually get water forced in them. They also have airbags on the back of their necks that protects their skull and their spine as well. So when they hit the water at 60 miles an hour, they're not going to break their necks. So they've got these incredible adaptations for flying and for feeding as they do. Ravens, well, this is just a photograph of a raven because I love ravens, and you can't get away from them. They're just about everywhere. Great grey owl, I'm in California now. This was down in near, where was this? Oh, it was down in South California, as were the sandhill cranes. This was at the near the Salton Sea, the Bono Bird Reserve. California quail there as well. Obviously, you'll be a lot of you will be aware of these birds because these are the birds that you probably see regularly. For me, it's quite exciting because I very rarely get to see any of these birds where I live. Northern mockingbird, which is actually in Belize, and one of my favorite seabirds, magnificent frigate bird. So we've had these are off Costa Rica, I believe. This is a female or a juvenile. And massive wingspans. They are kleptoparasites, so they will track or they will attack other birds and just mob them until they throw up, regurgitate their food, or they will actually lose their food, and these birds will swoop in and just collect it. They don't want to hit the water because they're not waterproof, so they will skim things off the top of the water. But obviously, if they get wet, they're going to have problems. These are in Christmas Island, off Australia. So all around the world, wherever I go, it's good to see them if you can. The Brahmini kite here, this was up in Australia, I think. So yeah, it was near Darwin, although we had seen them in Asia as well. We do get them over in Northern Australia. Grey-headed fish eagle. Now, this is a bird that our guide said you've got to be very, very careful because this is an osprey, and a lot of people confuse them with fish eagle. And in fact, he got it wrong because this was the fish eagle, but a very proud-looking animal. And this, of course, is the osprey. Now, ospreys I adore. I think they're wonderful birds. And when I was in Kelowna, I went out on a motorbike ride, and I was lucky enough to get above one of these. They put out, the utilities companies put out nesting posts so they don't nest on the electricity pylons, and just being able to watch these birds for maybe an hour was absolutely wonderful. They are incredible creatures, and of course we get them in Europe, so we're used to seeing them over there as well, and they have a regular migration. So great egret, lots of heron family out there. The great egret being one of them. And of course, in the UK now, we're getting all the egrets as well. I remember the first little egret that I saw back in, I think, the 1990s, and now we're getting them nesting all over the place in the UK. This was in Asia somewhere, I can't remember quite where. And cattle egrets as well, with this sort of cream forehead and the cream plumes as well, looking a little bit different. A Bassian thrush, I know nothing about this bird, only that it took me 7 hours to actually identify it. And in Australia as well, satin bowerbird. Look at that eye. Isn't that absolutely spectacular? Beautiful birds. Didn't see any of them actually building bowers, unfortunately, but they were making quite a lot of noise. Oh, there were some males actually out there clearing an area, but not actually building. Then the bush thick-knee, or the curlew. This was again in Darwin, I think, but a beautiful bird to see, and very similar. They are called curlews as well, and our curlew in Europe is a totally different bird. It's not one of those families. And then you get the smaller finches, so the chestnut-breasted manakin or the munia. Here, beautiful colours. A lot of these are cage and aviary birds now, sadly, as well. They are imprisoned in cages. They should be free. They should be flying in their groups. Great crested tern, the largest tern in Australia. And the predominant gull out there is the silver or the red-billed gull, depending on where you are, whether you're in Australia or whether you're in New Zealand. But a very proud-looking and very beautiful gull. I do love the red on there. Orange-footed scrub fowl. Again, this was in a municipal park, just scrabbling around, almost doing it as a dance. You know, they look as if they're just about to kick up and, do the can or something like that. But interesting birds. I mean, they have these huge legs, huge feet, and great to see. Lots of magpie larks around in Australia as well. This is a male because the white eye stripe goes right in front of the eye. This is a female because the white above the eye doesn't reach to the front. Just something that I learned there. And then the magpie goose, obviously not a relative of the magpie, and neither was the magpie lark. But this is another bird that you will see in the parks. They can be a bit of a problem, mainly because of all of that poo that they're going to be leaving around. You can see here coming into land in a park, but they are gorgeous birds nonetheless. And then the Australian pelican, the largest pelican in the world with a 12-foot wingspan, 11 to 12-foot wingspan. They are communal feeders, so they will actually herd fish together so that they can all scoop up the fish together. And the white pelicans like these are the ones that actually surface feed, so they skim their food up in their mouths. It's the brown and the grey pelicans that actually dive from heights. But seeing these just sort of standing around is great. Brown pelican, this was in the Panama Canal. Fantastic flyers, wonderful aerobatics. And the Peruvian pelican as well, which I think is probably the same species. But this was at Las Ballastas, those islands that I mentioned earlier as well. Great place to go for bird watchers and for mammals as well, because we'll see some sea lions in it in a little while. But these are big birds, very beautiful, and when they've got that full plumage with the little blue bits on their skin as well, you know that's in their breeding plumage. So here we have black cockatoo, and these are all over Australia, some in New Zealand as well. They're becoming scarce though. Sadly, they are having a few problems. There's a lot of disease in the parrot family that is going through them. But you can't really miss the sulphur-crested cockatoo. These, again, are parkland birds all around Australia, and you'll get them coming down. And the galahs, the ones that you see out in the plains and out in the country, but these are the ones that you see in the parks, the sulphur-crested, beautiful birds. And the rainbow lorikeet, probably one of my favourite lorikeets or parrot family, stunning birds. And again, when you can actually get up close to them, you can have some pretty good pictures because the colours just are wonderful. Crimson rosella is having problems in Australia. It is highly protected. And one of the reasons for that is that the next bird, the Indian myna, is actually taking over their nesting sites. So the Indian myna is classed as a pest, and they are gassed and they are killed regularly because they are taking things away, taking the nesting sites away from the other birds. Tawny frogmouth, I have to admit, this was in a refuge. These aren't wild birds. I wouldn't have been able to find them, I think. They're so well camouflaged. But these birds are wild, the masked lapwing or plover, or the spur-winged plover, or the spurred plover. And they're called spurred because they have these weird spurs on their wings. We'll see those in a little while. But all of them have this beautiful yellow mask. And there you can see those spurs. And they do fight with them. The males will actually fight with each other for dominance, and they'll use those against each other. Number of cormorants around the world, cormorants and shags. This is a pied cormorant. This is the black-faced cormorant, so it looks a little bit similar, but it's the black head actually goes forward to the bill. And then we're coming out to sea now, so we've got some Buller's shearwater. The shearwaters are really difficult to identify. The wedge-tailed shearwater, so I always try and find a very serious birder when we're on deck, and they will come out and spend time with me as well and correct me when I get things wrong, or not even correct me, just tell me what things are, because very often the shearwaters, there are so many of them, and you get a good variance of them in an area. But beautiful birds, and we're always looking forward to seeing them. Obviously, when the sea's a little bit flat, you don't see them, but when it's a bit rougher, they can get uplift. And the fairy prions or prions as well. Big-headed birds, these, but we get masses of these, maybe, well, hundreds, certainly, possibly thousands of these flying alongside of the ship, usually in the leeward side of the ship, so they're protected from the wind. And these have flown with us for many years. So the black-faced ibis, also called the dumpster duck, or the, what are other things, dumpster duck? I can't remember. Oh, tipster turkey. And there's another one as well that I can't remember. But again, you find these in all of the parks. They've got this wonderful bill that just reaches straight into litter bins without any problem at all. Now we're in New Zealand, the takahe. Takahe was thought to be extinct in 1898, but in 1948, some were found on a remote island, and they were then bred from them. So now there are 400 of them on islands that have been cleared of pests, and also in protected areas as well. Tui, this is one of the most beautiful sounds. If you're out in the woodlands and you hear a tui singing in the morning, it's the one that says, just get up and get out there and try and find me. Stunning bird. The karuru, New Zealand pigeon, is a big bird. Now you'll be aware that pigeons and doves often leave a lot of dust behind them when they fly off. And when this flies off, it's like somebody's thrown a bag of chalk at you. There's so much dust that comes out of those wings, but look at those glorious colours. Absolutely stunning, gorgeous bird. And then the Pewaka Waka, or the New Zealand fantail. This is a little thing, and it's always performing. This is a grey fantail in Tasmania, so the same family, but they're always performing. They're always clicking the tail like a wagtail, just clicking them up and down, displaying, showing their territory, and they can get quite aggressive towards humans as well. So beware that they can actually attack you, but they're only little birds. They're only having fun. They're not going to harm you at all. The kaka, one of the flying parrots in New Zealand. I didn't see the kakapo, which is the flightless birds, but again, you can get quite close to these. They can be a bit of a pest. Certainly in the mountainous areas, these are the ones that will also, like the kia, rip the rubbers out of car windscreens, and they'll just take about anything at all. And they've got a beak there that is perfectly adapted to that as well. So the kaka is a great bird to look for if you're in New Zealand. Stunningly beautiful. Now, is this a wandering albatross or not? I'm not sure. It could be. It could be a southern royal albatross. And these are up for debate. If anybody has any ideas out there, if Bernardo's out there, he'll probably know. But lots of birds, obviously, when we get down into the southern oceans in particular, there are a lot of albatross down there flying around. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be on a ship and having these actually sharing the airspace with you. This is a wandering albatross, although it doesn't look like one. This is a juvenile. And this was actually near Dunedin, where I'd gone to see the royal albatross. Shy albatross, very often we get, these were in the Tasman Sea. And as I say, because they are flying very close to you and sharing your air, sometimes they'll just sit on an air bubble, rather like the gannets and the boobies do as well. If you're just patient, you can get some pretty good photographs of them. Salvin's albatross, lovely bird. I love that very dainty grey head. This was actually taken on a deep sea trip that I went to out of Valparaiso. I actually won a trip out in a blind auction, and I was the only one who was going to be going to Valparaiso before Christmas. So I was the only one who bid on it. But we went out and we had 7 different species out in the Humboldt Current, which is a great place to see these. It's a rather smelly trip. You can imagine if we're chumming as well, and we were in force 5 most of the time. So it did get a little bit smelly. And then back in New Zealand at Dunedin, Northern Royal Albatross is the only place on the mainland where they nest. And you can go and get fairly close to them from the hides. You can't walk through them, but you can see them. A bull's albatross, this was my first bull's albatross. I didn't know there was such a thing, but this was, where was this? This was in New Zealand as well, I think, off the coast of New Zealand, but very striking beak. So once you've got your eye in, it's not a bad bird to identify because you can pick them out quite a way. And the storm petrel as well, beautiful black bird. This was, again was on the pelagic trip. And the great petrel, now this is a huge bird. It is trying to be an albatross, but sadly it's just not pretty enough. It does the best thing, best chance. It's got a big wingspan, it's got a big head, it's got its tube beak as well, but it's not an albatross. Back in Australia, laughing kookaburra, the sort of recognizable, one of the two recognizable birds of Australia, really. The other one's probably the emu, and plenty of kookaburras to see all around the place as well. Not just the laughing kookaburra, there's a blue kookaburra as well. But when you hear that cackle, you hear that laughter, you can't avoid just looking around and trying to find them. And they're very, very friendly. They do come in very close. This one was actually offering me a cockroach. I'd already eaten, and I'm vegan, so I wasn't going to take it. Now, this trip for me that I've just come on was absolutely spectacular for bald eagles. I love them. I was seeing them all over the place at quite a distance. And then when I got into one of the stops, I can't remember where this was, there was one just sitting in a tree, just watching. And he was so regal. He looked like a model until he moved his head. And then another eagle flew past him and he sort of squawked out at him. I thought, oh, that's no model at all. So I spent about 3/4 of an hour with this bird. But obviously the wonderful, the bird that America knows very well, the bald eagle, and Canada as well. So this actually was in Alaska. It wasn't in Canada. So this was an American bald eagle. But beautiful birds and well worth looking out for. And if you can get this close to them, then just do it and just stay. It's always good having time on your hands just to wander around. The nests are quite incredible. In the first year when they build the nests, the parents are so shattered that they don't actually lay any eggs. They get back home and they've got plaster in their hair and, they need a shower. And the last thing they want to do is procreate. So they don't. So the nests are actually used for the second year, and then they will rear their young. Now, it takes about 4 or 5 years for the young to reach adult plumage. This is juvenile, probably in its first year, but plenty of these around, particularly when the salmon are running, but they're always looking for any scraps at all. And if you can get close to them, then it's worth. They're not interested in you at all. They're only interested in fish. Now, on the Alaska trip, we had a lot of these pigeon guillemots, beautiful little birds with these bright red legs. We would call them guillemots in the UK. I think black guillemots, in fact, we would call them in Europe. But over here, they're called the pigeon guillemot. So they're a lovely little bird, one of the auk family. Another auk is the common mure or the common guillemot. And again, this is the guillemot that we would call that in the UK. Lots of nesting sites as well out there. They prefer rock faces. They lay these very triangular shaped eggs. It used to be think that they were that shape so that they didn't roll off. In fact, it's been proven now that it's for strength, because when these birds land on them, that is almost a triangle, and a triangle is structurally very, very sound. Another little auk here, the marbled murrelet, beautiful birds. They just buzz along, fly very, very low. And of course, the puffin. This is the Atlantic puffin. So this I took in Iceland. This again here in Iceland as well. Beautiful birds, stunning creatures. Look at those bills. Now the bills actually are discarded, so they have grey bills, and this colour comes in the breeding season. So you don't see them in the when they're not breeding at all. And in fact, the number of lines on them builds up rather like tree rings, so you can tell the age of the bird as well, because they'll have more scales on them the older that they get. But lovely, lovely birds. And the Atlantic puffin, as we have here, is the smallest of the puffin family. So if you want to see them, go to Iceland before the end of June, because in July they'll start moving. Then we get the horned puffin, very similar, but this is the Pacific bird. It's a bit larger. It's called horned because that growth above their eye looks like a little bit of a horn. And then the tufted puffin, which I think is the punk puffin of the family, with this lovely, lovely yellow crest that you see flying there, but no real color on the beak, but a big, big orange bill, quite a heavy bill as well, so it's much bigger than the other ones. And this is the largest puffin of the puffin species, in fact. Just going to have a quick sip. Okay, some penguins now. So this again was New Zealand, the little blue or fairy penguin, and here they're actually getting rid of their feathers. So the adults are actually getting rid of their feathers in the summer, and the youngsters are actually getting rid of their fluffy feathers to have the proper waterproof feathers coming through. And this was on a little boat trip that I did, and we just hung around with these delightful little things. You can see the very, very small pupil. Their eyes are adapted for diving underwater and seeing things at depth. So when they come to the surface, obviously their pupils shut down because they don't want to damage their retina. So that's why they look a little bit evil with those tiny, tiny little eyes or tiny little pupils. Magellan penguins, these were in Chile on that world trip that wasn't the world trip. Lovely comical birds as well, and they were in full courtship behavior as well. So you'd get them just strutting along, copying each other, and do a lot of the beak tapping as well, giving each other. This is one actually giving a present of grass to another one. And here you can see the sort of synchronized preening, and then there'll be the bill tapping as well. So here we go, the bill tapping. So beautiful birds to see, quite rubby because they are living in quite a dirty area, and obviously a lot of poo around as well there. So they're not the cleanest of penguins, but they're certainly not the dirtiest penguins that I've seen. These are the dirtiest penguins. These are the Humboldt penguins, and these are again on the Les Balastas Islands. And these are filthy because they're basically living in guano from another bird that we're going to see in a little while. But they burrow into the guano, and that's where they make their nests. So they're always going to be a little bit filthy. The smell there is horrendous, but they're quite noisy. These are banded penguins, as were the Magellan penguins and other penguins around the world as well. So we get different sorts of penguins. Obviously, these are related to the other penguins, but they're not the same family as the emperor or the king. And this is the guano cormorant, where guano comes from. And there were millions and millions of these. The guano used to be farmed. It's not farmed as much now. And the Inca tern also lives there as well. Beautiful tern. You can see this really weird white moustache, but very much a tern. You don't realize it's a tern until it flies up in the air, and you can see the very delicate wings. And there you can see it looks more like a tern when it's actually flying than when it's sitting on the rocks. But Las Balastas, I recommend. Please do go there off the coast of Peru. Bare-throated tiger heron, this was in the Panama Canal. Oh, this is in California. Black-chinned hummingbird, so you'll be well aware of those. And a burrowing owl as well. I think that was out in Mexico somewhere. Obviously, it lives in burrows. And now we're on to the mammals. So you've been waiting for mammals, I'm sure, because we're going to look at some cetaceans. So not all of them. These are the 42 species that I've seen since 2019. So there are some species that I've seen before then that I haven't seen since. So since 2019, I've seen 42 species on the cruises. Common dolphin all over the place. That first shot was in the Tasman Sea. These were actually in the China Sea, I think. But we'll see common dolphins all around the world, and they're called common because they are common to most of the oceans, not because they're particularly common in any one area. This beautiful hourglass pattern to them, very distinctive, and also you can see this slightly lighter patch on the dorsal fin that most of the adults will have, and that's a good distinctive when you get confused with other dolphins that don't have that. Bottlenose dolphins, again, all around the world. Back in the UK, we have some of the largest, up to about 4 meters. These are far more delicate ones. These are in Asia. I'm not sure that they were common bottlenose dolphins. They may have been one of the other bottlenose dolphins, but I haven't looked at the diagnostics enough to see those, but always a joy to see. And of course, in New Zealand, the Hector's dolphins. Didn't see the Maui's, which is its close cousin, which is highly, highly endangered, but there were quite a few Hectors around, particularly on the south coast around Christchurch and places like that. Lovely animals to see with these Mickey Mouse ear-shaped dorsal fins, and now they are more protected than they ever have been. Commerson's dolphin, this was down in Chile off the coast of Chile, and the Peel's dolphin as well, which looked a little bit similar as well. But that's the only photograph I got of the Peel's dolphin because they were moving around. Back to Alaska, Dall's porpoise. So this is just from a couple of weeks ago. I was waiting to see Dall's porpoise. These weren't actually doing much. They were just lolling around on the surface. The fast ones I couldn't catch at all because they are obviously a very, very fast dolphin. They can outrun orca, but orca will take debilitated ones, and they will take the older ones as well. Pacific white-sided dolphins, not particularly good shots here, but I was happy to see those as well because these aren't creatures that I'm used to seeing in the Atlantic, obviously. But that very distinctive dorsal fin and the lighter colouring towards the trailing edge give it away, and that lovely horseshoe roots on it, horseshoe-shaped white packed blaze as well. Atlantic white-sided dolphin, this is on the other side. So this was probably in Scotland. In fact, this was in Scotland. And spinner dolphins all around the world. Different subspecies of spinner dolphins, but boy, are they active. They are just so energetic. They can spin 8 times before they hit the water, and they'll do that maybe 20 times in a row. And some of them have this forward-facing dorsal fin as well. I'm not sure why, whether that helps them spin or whether it's better for them in the water, but it's quite a curious thing. And the males seem to be a little bit more forward in terms of their dorsal fins than the females. So very, very acrobatic species, and a joy just to watch. When we see them from a cruise ship, obviously the guests go crazy because they just don't understand what's going on. Nobody understands what's going on. I always say they're doing it for fun. And that seems to keep people happy most of the time. Then the short-fin pilot whales. We have short-fin pilot whales in the tropic areas. So these tend to be a little bit stockier, a little bit shorter than the long-fin pilot whales. Can't remember where these were. I think these were probably off the coast of Costa Rica or somewhere like that, but certainly they were Canaries, actually. They're in the Canary Islands, so definitely a short-finned pilot whale. And there you can see that very distinctive bulbous dorsal fin as well, with a very wide base to it. So the males have a very wide base to the bottom of the dorsal fin, and the dorsal fin can be quite large and swept back. Quite a lot of variation in the shape of the fins as well. So it's very difficult sometimes to say whether one is a male or a female. The long-finned pilot whales here. We're talking about the length of the pectoral fins, so it's unlikely that you're going to see those. But the long-fin pilot whales are a little bit longer. I think they're a little bit sleeker as well. They're certainly bigger. They don't seem to have as much of a bulbous head as the short-finned, but they have that bulbous head. Obviously, that contains the melon, which is their echolocation system, and feeding on squid. Most of the squid feeders around the world have a very, very distinctive and very large melon as well, because they're hunting prey that is moving very, very fast at depth where there's no light. This is in Iceland. So these are some of the longfin pilot whales in Iceland around Akureyri, which is a great place to go to if you want to just get out on boats and see whales and dolphins pretty much as soon as you get out in the bay. And orca, well, orca are, they're just spectacular creatures. These are in Norway. These happen to come across, well, every time I did a deck watch, they would be there within 30 seconds of me starting, which was great because I got the title Whale Whisperer on that particular cruise, and nobody could understand how we were going to see them. These, though, are in Alaska, a little bit distant, just spy hopping there. But we had, certainly we had northern residents and we had some bigs as well. I'm not sure that we saw southern residents, but the bigs, certainly, these are bigs. And when we come to one of the photos where there's a bit more diagnostic, I'll be able to point out why I think they're bigs. But basically the bigs have this, their saddle actually comes far more forward underneath the dorsal fin. This is a calf and a mother. This again was off Seward, which is a great place. If you go out on any of the wildlife boat trips from Seward, you're likely to see orca up there. And they are pretty spectacular animals to see. And there you can see that this is a calf, but the mother in front, and yet there you can see that the saddle goes way, way forward, and that's one of the things. And again, with a different shaped eye patch as well. If anybody disagrees with me, please, in questions and answers, do say so. But that's one of the things that I seem to have picked up on the cruise. And obviously, a lot of them will have little nicks in their dorsal fins, and as you know, that's a way of identifying individual animals. As they age, that little nick may drop off, but obviously at that point, it will still be recognizable as the original animal. So orca, wonderful, wonderful creatures. And one of my favorite apex predators out there. And the humpback whales. Well, you can see behind me these two humpback whales, or three. In fact, there's a third one there. Yeah, humpback whales all over the world. I love humpback whales. Obviously, you can track them quite easily through Happy Whale. I think I've got a Happy Whale pic coming up in a little while. But very distinctive animals and different feeding habits as well. In Alaska, I missed the trip out where they had bubble feeding. I wish I'd seen that. I really did. But I missed that. And even when I came back down and went on the same trip, those humpbacks had moved on. They'd moved back up north. So we missed that particular group. But it seems to be a Canadian and Alaskan thing. In Europe, we don't have the collaborative bubble feeding. We do get individuals that will go down and just blow bubbles under shrimp to bring them up in the water column. Obviously, you see things like this occasionally, which is very sad, but this is a survivor. It's a propeller cut from it, very fast propeller cut. And you do see quite a lot of damage to a lot of the whales out there. I was surprised on most of the photographs that I took, there were signs of either propellers or entanglements. And obviously there are entanglement or disentanglement groups around the world. I used to run one back in the UK, or our charity still runs one, and they do incredible work freeing humpbacks. And over here, obviously, they're doing right whales as well, particularly on the east coast of North America. But yeah, humpbacks all around. You can see there quite a bit of scarring on that one from netting at some point. But if you go to Alaska, and you take photographs like this, or anywhere where you see humpbacks, you can upload them to happywhale.com, and then you can track them around the world as other people send photographs in, because these undersides of the flukes are very distinctive, like our fingerprints, as I'm sure you know, and you'll be able to track them around the world. So beautiful, beautiful. I think that is the photograph behind me at the moment, or it's close. It's in that sequence, obviously. This is one of mine that I first saw in 2019, in fact. And you can see there, I saw him down in Baja, California, and he's been tracked right up to the Aleutians. So on that full migratory distance. Fin whales all around the world, second largest animal in the world. Great to see, very distinctive big blow, and quite a few of these unidentified beaked whales. I have more unidentified beaked whales than I have identified beaked whales. And grey whale, which I'm sure all of you are very familiar with in Orange County as well. Sperm whales we tend to get around the world. Some of them in the tropics, they'll mainly be the females and the calves, unless it's the season where the males come in to mate with them. But again, they can come very, very closely, close to the ship. Very distinctive left-hand blow off at 45 degrees from the surface of the water, and also to the front, 45 degrees to the front. So that's the cetaceans. We're still with marine mammals now, and a few sea lions for you. So it's a New Zealand sea lion. Very noisy creature, very smelly creature. This one actually didn't like being disturbed. Now you can see that he's got ear flaps. So these are the animals, the sea lions and the fur seals are called the eared seals, whereas the phocids are the true seals. So the harbour seals and the grey seals, things like that, don't have those external ear flaps. They also have different pelvises. So the phocids, the true seals, just sort of wobble about like a slug on a beach, whereas these sea lions and the fur seals can actually sit back on their hips and they can actually waddle around. And if you actually come to one of my talks, I do a very, very good impersonation of a waddling sea lion and a fur seal. And I can't remember which, but one of them brings both rear flippers forward together and then back, and the other one actually does it one at a time. So that's one of the differences between the sea lions and the fur seals. This was at behind or close to Dunedin, at a private viewing place called Nature's something or other, I can't remember, but well worth going to if you can find it. Chilean sea lion, this is in Valparaiso, and these are just on the beach in Valparaiso. Very brave dog here. And if you're not careful, you can actually get caught out, because if you walk under one of the quays to go and take photographs of pelicans, and then you come back and the tide's coming in, then you can have quite a few of these chasing you, as this particular photographer did. And that is the one photograph that I took, because I ran pretty soon after that. South American sea lion, this is back in Les Balestas again. Lovely creatures. This was inside a cave and totally asleep, but beautiful, beautiful animals. And people get confused on the coloration as well, because when they're not wet, they dry out and they'll look brown, whereas when they're wet, they'll be fairly black. This is a big, brutish bull. He was certainly in charge of his harem on the beach. Look at that head. He's certainly a fighter, and nobody was actually tackling him, I don't think. But this is another reason for going to Les Balestas. So Steller sea lion, back in Alaska now. Great place for Steller sea lions. And on this particular wildlife boat trip, I think this was out from Seward, we had otters, as we'll see in a little while. We had the puffins as well. So it was a great trip all around. But Steller sea lions, I think, were the most seen sea lion or seal on the trips that I've just been on. We didn't see too much of the others. We did have a fur seal. We did have some harbour seals as well, which we'll see in a little while. But very often you can see them resting up on what I would call a buoy, you would call a buoy, and they're just having a quiet snooze amongst themselves, and obviously getting a bit of warmth from each other as well. So harbour seals, we get harbour seals out there, as I say. This is a phosid, so it has a different pelvis, different way of moving, both in terms of swimming and on land as well, to the fur seals and the sea lions. Right, big boys now, into Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan elephant, quite distinctive Asian elephant. Lovely animals. You can see that they have this hump on their backs. They also, the Sri Lankan ones, have this curious freckling as well, which the other Asian versions don't. These were actually from an orphanage, and the only training that they have is they train them to walk down to the river, to have a splash around, and then they'll walk back. A couple of them are chained back at the reserve, but that's only for their own good, because they are undergoing medication at that time in the hospital. But generally they're free roaming and great animals to look at. Still a problem though, they are still being used, particularly by the monks for displays, but the government is looking into it, and they're almost setting up sanctuaries now so that they will rent out elephants to the for displays, rather than those animals being badly treated by their keepers. So long-tailed macaque, we're here in Asia. This would have been in Malaysia, I think, and one of the predominant species out there, one of the predominant primates. Lots of animals out there. These are macaques. Macaques have tails. Now, you might get confused. Apes don't have tails. So this is an orangutan. Although some of the apes, some of the macaques don't have tails either. But the species, within the species, they have tails. So that's why they're not apes. This is at a reserve, which is an island in Malaysia. These actually came from Sumatra and Borneo, so they're taken out there, they're shipped out there, and then they are looked after, and then they are shipped back to Borneo and Sumatra. This is the big dominant male. This is BJ, big dangerous male, so they do have wire fencing around to protect the keepers, and sometimes the other males on the island will jump over that fence to actually keep away from that animal. Malaysian flying fox. Malaysia. It's not a fox, obviously. Now, these are, I think in its Latin name, it actually has vampira, but these are not vampire bats at all. They are vegetarian, totally vegetarian animals, or herbivorous. The little red flying fox, this was in Casino in Australia. They have tens of thousands of these flying in, and if you look down the river, you can see where the weight of them has just broken all of the bows down the river. Back into Costa Rica, three-toed sloth. We have the three-toed and the two-toed, and this has a symbiotic relationship with the sloth moth, or possibly the sloth moth. I'm not quite sure, but it's worth Googling and reading about the moth and the way that they actually have this symbiotic relationship, because the moth lives off the algae, but it also poops, and the sloth can then get nutrient from that it couldn't actually get from the algae itself. So this little fellow is on the, now where is he? He's in the Panama Canal at one of the islands in the main lake where that feeds the canal. So these were quite interesting, because these and the howler monkey that you'll see in a moment, and the Jeffries, the little Jeffries marmoset as well, they had problems in COVID because they weren't getting fed. All of the boat trips used to go out, feed them maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day. And then when I went out afterwards, I said to one of the keepers, there seemed to be fewer animals here than there were. And he said, yeah, we had a lot of cannibalism. The howler monkeys started eating the marmosets, and there was no breeding either, because they obviously regulated themselves without the food coming in. So they've now actually started feeding sensibly and just putting one orange out rather than a whole load of oranges every time they go out. So sea otter, back in Alaska and Canada. Oh, these were fantastic. So this was from Icy Point. And Icy Point is a wonderful, wonderful place to go if you want to see sea otters, because they have hundreds of them and they just drift around. Don't worry about anything at all. And you may know that sea otters will have their favorite stone for breaking clams with, and they'll carry that stone around with them. They have a flap under their arm, their forearm, and they'll just tuck that in their little pocket, and they'll bring it out when they're eating clams. They carry their young on their bellies as well. As you can see, such endearing creatures. They really, really are beautiful, beautiful animals, and I could have spent a lot more time with them. So here we have some more otters for you. I think that's the last otter that we're going to see there. And on to the big ones. So black bear, yeah, I was hoping to see a black bear, and for a time I thought this was all I was going to see. And then this happened. This was 20 seconds before our guide on a trip was going to say, I'm sorry, we haven't seen any bear. We've got to go now. And this black bear came out. And he was going down to the river. This was near there was a salmon run on at the time. He was just ignoring all of the dead salmon that the eagles were feeding on, and just going up to where the ladder was. I thought this might have been vegan, because he's having a good chew of some of the sedge as he goes through as well, but obviously not. He knows there's a protein hit there. He knows that there's salmon to be feeding on in a little while. So the one animal that I had to see while I was in Alaska eventually did show itself, and I was very, very happy to have that. Obviously, it's an animal that you don't want to get too close to. Where I am now, I'm in Briscoe in Canada. There are signs all around the place saying bear country beware. And I was sent out with the dog the other day for a walk, and bear repellent as well. But didn't see a bear. And the dog actually decided that when it started raining, he went home anyway and just left me on my own, totally useless. Got to be careful, because his owner's listening in, probably might be watching this as well. But lovely dog, lovely dog. And this bear, yeah, this was well away from us. So we were up on a viewing point, no danger to us there at all, much, much higher than us. And he was just intent on going off to feed on the salmon in a little while. Great to see. Obviously, you have the grizzlies as well in North America, and the 2 species, and polar bears as well. And there are some growlars and pizzlies out there as well, which are crossbreeded between the grizzlies and the polar bears, but they're not out there too much. So a couple of little creatures here. The Palm Springs ground squirrel. This was just a lovely, lovely little creature, and I just love taking photographs of little things as well as the big things. Little things can be a little bit of a problem. Right, so we've done the mammals. Now we're on to some of the marsupials. And of course, these include things like the koala and other animals as well. Koala is much, much bigger than you would think. I'm always amazed. They sleep for about 20 to 22 hours a day, and that's a lot to do with the eucalyptus leaves that they're eating. They need to be able to digest them, so they need a lot of time. You'll know that they have very, very small brains as well because of the toxins, but they will smell the leaves and they'll go for leaves that, there, look at those claws. So you can see the second and the third claw are actually fused together, and that's supposed to help them grooming. But they will actually smell the leaves, and they will go for the younger, fresher leaves that have less toxin in them. And they have this sort of basal plate on the backside, like a big, thick cushion. So other creatures do have that as well. Other marsupials do have them as well. But obviously, when you're sitting back like that in the trees, you want to have your own cushion with you. Red kangaroo, big animal, can reach 9 foot in length. So it's good to see those. These were in a refuge again, because I didn't go out into the big red, but these are very much the plains animal. What we did see in the wild, though, were eastern grey or the forest kangaroos. So these are smaller, but they can still be fairly big. And the kangaroo island kangaroo, which, as you might imagine, is endemic to Kangaroo Island. And then you get the smaller wallabies, the bush wallabies here, lovely little Joe in their pouch, and Bennett's wallaby. And something I'm going to leave you with on this is that all of the marsupials have a bifurcated penis. They have a two-headed penis, and the females have 3 vaginas. So I'm going to leave you with that and just let you ponder on that. And that's your homework to try and check that out. Tasmanian devil, again, in a refuge. We didn't see these in the wild. Very, very loud, screaming creatures, great fun. But they're having a problem now with a facial cancer. But it's been discovered now that one of the vaccines for COVID may actually be helping them. So they're actually testing those. So now onto the monotremes, the echidna being one of them. You can see these little beads on them. That's in a rescue as well. So that just identifies the individual. And if you think having a bifurcated penis is amazing, well, these little fellows and the platypus have a 4-headed penis. At least the males do anyway. And with that thought, this is the closest I'm going to get to a platypus, or I did get to a platypus. And I can see a few shocked horror little floaties coming up there. Anyway, platypus, I didn't see. This was the closest I got to get to one. But with all wildlife, the great thing is that it's always there to go out and see at some other time. So there you go. Thank you very much for your interest. If you want to follow me and follow my journeys, just remember Around the World in 80 Whales, and then drop that down to ATW80W, and you'll find me on Facebook there and also Instagram, but I don't update Instagram that often. But thank you very much for joining me, and I think we're now into question and answers if somebody wants to come back and rescue me. I don't know how to do that. Oh, yes, here's somebody.
Hey, yeah, it's Hannah. Hey, at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to hover, and a little control bar should come up, and you'll see Q&A.
Q&A is at the top. I've got...
There you go.
Yeah, I've got some questions there. Oh, nice. Okay, I'm looking for a question. Stephen, this is from Sheila. Do you know what the origins are of the belief by some humans that we could capture orca and take them out of their natural habitat and instead keep them in captive for entertainment? How did this begin? It began in Vancouver, in fact, and Vancouver Aquarium were the first ones to bring it in. They captured a lot of the southern residents, and that's one of the reasons that the southern residents have a lot of problems with recovery. Obviously, they were decimated. They took a lot of females out, so there wasn't a breeding population there. And I'm sure you know the southern residents are in a very, very sorry state at the moment. We've just lost Lita, or Toki, who's the quite old animal that was taken at that time and then put into Miami Seaquarium. She's just died, sadly, just before she was going to be put in a a better home, a sort of sea sanctuary. But she was in that prison basically for 50 years. She's been without an ORCA friend for 40 years, and it really is horrible. And it's one of those things that I think is appalling. I always think it's one of the obscenities of life that we imprison our own species for correction. As a punishment, we take away their liberty, and yet we do exactly the same thing with other species for profit. And that's why this has happened. It was purely for profit. There's no science that's coming out of captive cetaceans now. It's all been done, and it's pretty horrendous. So it is quite difficult there. And yeah, there are some people in there saying pretty much the same thing. Oh, thank you for close-ups of the eyes. It helps humans understand these are sentient beings. Indeed, they are. And I think that it's something that we need to remember, particularly with cetaceans, which is obviously my love, but all of the other animals as well. Even whatever we think, they all have feelings, and we often miss that out. There are any more questions coming in? Oh, what animal do you wish to see you have not yet? Polar bear. That's a definite. So polar bear, I definitely want to see. In terms of cetacean, I would love to see a narwhal. So you never know, I might get to see a narwhal at some point. But there are a few animals out there, and yes, a grizzly bear as well. So 2 bears there for you, a grizzly and a polar. But it doesn't. I'm not worried if I don't see them, because I know they're still out there. I'll get to see them at some stage. And what do you believe is the most effective avenue to fight for wildlife rights? That's from Anonymous. Hello, Anonymous. I think it's a mixture, really. I mean, I've done a lot of work politically as well. That really does help. But sometimes demonstrations can. One of the problems with demonstrations is that a lot of people will just turn a blind eye to them and say, well, yeah, okay, we know you're going to do this. But politically, if you can work on your representatives in the Senate or wherever, or in the state, to fight for your causes and fight for the cause of the animals, that's the way to do it. It has to be diplomatic, because laws need to be changed more than anything. And once a law is changed, then that's obviously going to help things. But going head on, yes, there is a reason for doing that, to focus on problems, but sometimes, well, usually it's the diplomatic approach that actually gets the results. Have I seen any beluga whales? From Jackie? Yes. My last beluga whale I saw was in the Thames in 2018 and 2019. I shouldn't have been there, obviously, but I have seen belugas in Svalbard, Norway. So I haven't seen any over here. I'm hoping that I might get to see some in the St. Lawrence River later this year. And do I want to see the vaquita from Peter? It's a mix. I would love to see a vaquita, but there are so few of them. They're down to, I think, single figures now. The last report is that any interaction with them really is not good unless you're out there to save them. So I wouldn't want to go out on a trip that was going out to see the vaquita unless it was going to do some good to save them. Sadly, I think the vaquita could be the second cetacean that we see go within our lifetime. The Yangtze River dolphin is gone. The vaquita, I think, is very, very close. And although a lot of scientists say, well, you know, there are some calves out there and they could come back, I sadly have a feeling that's probably not going to happen. And, oh, fairly large numbers seen recently from Peter. I didn't know that, actually. When you say, do you know how many out there, Peter? I thought we were down to sort of single figures, or at least, you know, at most a dozen. But maybe I'll look into that. There's a bit of homework for me to look at as well. But certainly there's been a lot of money spent on it, on trying to outlaw the fishing for the totoaba, which is the fish that is being hunted illegally or caught illegally for the Chinese market, for the swim bladder. And as you know, the vaquita is pretty much the same size, so it's getting caught in the same nets. So, oh, hello. Sorry, I've got some visitors here. I'm just doing an online Zoom talk. I've just got some visitors wandering in. So, I think, are there any more questions?
No, I think that's it. This is just absolutely spectacular, and gosh, what a life. How fantastic is that to just
It's
travel?
worth retiring for. It's worth retiring for. Just work towards retirement, and then once you retire, retire to live. Don't retire to retire.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it, and I will be in touch with you very soon. And have a wonderful evening. Thank you all for coming, and tend to your visitors now. And yeah, your walks with bears repellent. That's fantastic.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you again.
Thanks for coming. Nice to see you.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye.